In his speech to the plenary held on the wings of the summit of IPOD in December last year, President Museveni admonished those insisting that we need to focus on ensuring peaceful and democratic transition into a post-Museveni Uganda as being petty. This is not a new stance. On 25th October 2018, President Museveni said, "Politics, in my view, should be about peace, education, health, infrastructure, and wealth in homes. However, people do not care about these things. Leaders seem to forget what they should do." For a man who has been for over 3 decades in government and whose main preoccupation has been blaming others, I find that he has forgotten, either innocently or intentionally. Today, instead of the promise and rhetoric of fundamental change, our current reality is an inept and personalized state characterized by totalitarianism, militarism, corruption, and cronyism. Does President Museveni remember what he wrote in the 10-point program? Point number 1 was democracy. While arguing that economic prosperity allows for meaningful participation of citizens in political life of the country, Museveni concluded in that document that, and I quote, "The immediate problem of Uganda is not economic, but political. When the political questions were mishandled, the economic problem ensued. And unless the political question is amicably resolved, there will be no economic recovery in Uganda." I'm sure Ugandans today agree. So when we talk about transition, we are seeking to sequence the solutions to our national malaise from immediate, intermediate, and long-term solutions. We seek to build a new consensus in Uganda. I believe that a consensus crafted in the bushes of Luwero has collapsed. That is the main rationale for a body like IPOD. President Museveni is talking about ends without talking about the means. It is laudable that we should pull together to ensure economic transformation and prosperity in an Africa that is truly independent. But do we have to choose between freedom and prosperity when we can have both? Dear friends, IPOD has achieved certain milestones. The Secretariat will brief the incoming leadership in detail, particularly the chair of the summit. IPOD has spearheaded policy debates and given prominence to certain policy issues like electoral reforms. IPOD has raised resources to support party building and also kept open channels for dialogue, which has probably enabled the country not to go into open war. We have serious reservations, of course, about where IPOD can reach, because sometimes what we do in IPOD looks like an empty ritual, and I understand those who are skeptical. The NRM continues to ride roughshod over the rule of law and constitutional guarantees of fundamental human rights. Over the weekend, I saw a photo of one of the richest men in Uganda engaged in a physical fight to defend his land, as if there are no courts of law, as if there are no law enforcement agencies in this country. To the incoming chairman, the NRM still continues to engage in manipulations during elections. That remains a major obstacle. President Museveni has short-circuited constitutional review issues, and the so-called electoral reforms before Parliament are nothing but tokenism. The conduct of security organs in violently dispersing rallies organized by the opposition is still a major blot on our so-called multi-party democracy. Colleagues, whether one is from the ruling party or from the opposition, whether rich or poor, educated or illiterate, from the rich suburbs or the ghetto, a believer or an atheist, young or old, it is useful to know the causes and consequences of the political decisions made by the current NRM regime in Uganda. Things happen. We see them happening. We get reports of them. Sometimes we see them as breaking news. However, it is usually unclear what caused the things to happen and what future consequences will result from these things. IPOD should not just be about politics. The things we are talking about should range from social, economic, and of course political issues. Through IPOD, we can continuously deliberate on important issues. It is important that we also talk about issues relating to the national economy. Economics matter. In fact, the biggest problems in Uganda today relate to economic problems. They say economics is the study of the use of scarce resources which have alternative uses. IPOD should start talking about economics during this tenure, because political revolutions are usually triggered off by the gaps between those who have and those who don't have. Uganda is a country of great promise, but that promise will miscarry, as indeed it has miscarried repeatedly before, due to a lack of a durable national consensus. It is our hope that IPOD will add value to the process of building a new national consensus in our country. Adding value depends on what our intention is. You must work with the material you have. We are the leaders of Uganda. We are at the forefront of decision making in the institutions of government. NRM, FDC, DP, UPC, JEMA. We are the ones that Uganda has. But out of the material we have, we can build something wonderful depending on what we set out to do. Let me give you an example. 1 bar of iron is worth $5. You can choose to make it into a horseshoe, which is only worth $10.50. That means you will have only doubled the value. But you can choose the same 1 bar of iron to make needles, and then you make enough needles that will be worth $3,280. But the same 1 bar of iron, which is worth only $5, can be used to make the balance spring for watches. And then the value of the balance springs will treble to an amazing $250,000. What are we setting out to make out of the material we have? Another example. A French painter bought a yard of canvas worth only 25 cents, and a brush plus paint worth 50 cents, US cents. And then he unleashed his magnificent vision. The result was the great painting known as the Angelus, which is valued at $105,000. All as a result of materials which only cost 75 US cents. Let us ask ourselves today, what effort are we willing to exert to refine what we have so that we can maximize what we can achieve in our country? I believe that in order to secure peace, democracy, and human rights, we need dialogue. That dialogue should rest on pillars of restraint and cooperation. I thank the IPOD Secretariat led by Mr. Frank Rusa. I thank the partners, especially the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy and the Democratic Governance Facility. But the international community can only support us. The real task of building consensus in our country is ours. At best, the international partners can only be midwives. We, the citizens of Uganda, are the ones who will give birth to the Uganda we want. In America, as settlers migrated from Europe to the new land of United States, each of them was required to write a document at the port of arrival. I saw with my own eyes, when I visited New York in 1993, a testimony by one of the visitors on Ellis Island. He wrote, "When I first landed in America, I was told that the roads in America are paved with gold. When I arrived in America, I realized three things. One, that the roads are not paved with gold. Two, that the roads are not paved at all. Three, I was expected to pave the roads." To my friends in the FDC, now that you are in charge, you'll find that the roads are not paved with gold. You'll find also that the roads are not paved at all. Above all, you'll find that you are required to pave the roads. Thank you very much. For God and my country.